I need to be real with you all. Sometimes the NFL isn't decided on the field at all. Sometimes the biggest wins and losses happen quietly, away from the cameras, in the corners of meeting rooms and practice fields where reputations are shaped before a single snap. And this week, Tom Brady peeled back the curtain on one of the league's most uncomfortable truths. It isn't about a blown coverage or a bad play call. It's about hypocrisy, politics, and the way opportunity can be stolen before a player even steps onto the turf. At the center of it all stands a young quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, caught in a storm he didn't create. And Brady? He's not whispering. He's shouting, and the league can't ignore it. Brady's words cut through the usual noise like a cold wind. He didn't hedge. He didn't hide behind vague platitudes. He called out the NFL and even pointed finger toward Cleveland for something that's been festering for years. Players are judged relentlessly, their every movement torn apart by analysts and fans, while coaches, the very people responsible for guiding those players, face little to no scrutiny. Imagine the absurdity of it. Quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders are analyzed down to the angle of their elbows and the speed of their dropbacks, but the coaches orchestrating their futures? They glide through, their mistakes shielded, their authority unquestioned. Brady made it crystal clear this double standard has to end. And he didn't stop there. Behind the polite smiles and PR statements, Brady exposed a narrative that's been whispered for weeks. Some coaches claim that Shedeur Sanders simply isn't on the same level as Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco. But instead of accepting that, Brady flipped the script. He asked the questions those coaches hoped nobody would ask. Did you give Shedeur the first team reps he needed to find his rhythm? Did you bring him into the huddle with the starters, let him build timing, let him feel the speed of the game with the players he'd actually be throwing to? Did you walk him through the reads, the adjustments, the little details that make or break a quarterback? His challenge was blunt. If the answer is no, then you don't get to judge his performance. Then Brady aimed at something even bigger than Shedeur's situation. He challenged the myth of the infallible coach. With a tone that mixed disbelief and disappointment, he reminded everyone that NFL coaches aren't corporate masterminds running billion-dollar empires. They're not flawless tacticians immune to mistakes. A lot of times they're just football coaches, he said, echoing Bill Parcells' old line about PE teachers getting elevated. It wasn't meant as disrespect, it was a reality check. Too often, these same coaches who hold players' careers in their hands are treated as untouchable, even when their decisions sabotage the very talent they're supposed to cultivate. Look closely at what's happened with Shedeur Sanders. One coach insists to the media that they're developing him, while another avoids giving any clear answer. But in the shadows, no meaningful reps are happening. No first-team snaps. No chance to gel with the starters. No real investment in his growth. Then, when things don't look perfect, the whispers start. Maybe he's not ready. Maybe he's not that guy. How could anyone succeed when the system seems designed to ensure he doesn't? Expecting greatness without offering support isn't coaching. It's sabotage dressed as evaluation. And Brady isn't the only one sounding the alarm. Stephen A. Smith came in like a thunderclap, firing off a warning the league couldn't ignore. He said outright that Shedeur Sanders was being set up to fail. 11 practices, that's all the time it took to bury him on the depth chart, to relegate him to the third unit, fourth on the list, starved of meaningful reps, and then, with no preparation, they thrust him into a preseason start. No first-team chemistry. No rhythm with his receivers. No time to master the pace of the game. Then the same voices that denied him preparation turned to the cameras and said, "See? He's not ready." It's not fair. It's not honest. It's a manufactured narrative meant to protect the people in power, not the players chasing their dreams. Brady's frustration isn't coming from a place of bitterness. It's coming from hard-earned wisdom. He knows what happens when opportunity and preparation are mismatched. He knows how fragile a quarterback's future can be. Picture a young Tom Brady, unproven and overlooked, tossed into a starting role without first-team reps, judged on a single performance, and then cast aside. If that had been his story, there would be no 7 Super Bowls, no dynasty, no legend. That's exactly the cliff Shedeur Sanders is staring over right now. And if the league doesn't change, he won't be the last. This isn't just about one player or one team. It's about the culture of the NFL. If the league continues to shield coaches while hanging players out to dry, we're going to watch more promising careers unravel before they even begin. The fans lose. The game loses. The NFL loses credibility every time a talented young quarterback is sacrificed on the altar of politics and favoritism. We say, iron sharpens iron, but But iron doesn't sharpen anything if it's never brought to the grindstone. Shedeur Sanders deserves more than token reps and empty words. He deserves the chance to compete, to grow, to prove himself. Tom Brady said the quiet part out loud. Stephen A. Smith turned up the volume. And Shedeur's situation is the proof the league can't ignore. If the NFL truly wants to nurture its next generation of stars, it has to stop protecting mediocrity at the top and start demanding accountability across the board. Coaches need to be held to the same fire as the players they critique. Because if the league doesn't change course, the next superstar quarterback might not fail because he lacked talent. He might fail because the people entrusted to guide him never let him succeed. And for anyone who loves this game, that should be unacceptable. When I first caught Riddick's take on Shedeur Sanders and the coaching staff, it didn't feel like just another segment on NFL Live. It felt like a moment of truth that stopped me in my tracks. You know, when an analyst speaks with that perfect mix of frustration and authority, and you can tell it's not just commentary, it's a warning shot, that was Riddick. He didn't come to polish the team's image or to toe the line for the organization. He came to pull back the curtain on something uncomfortable, something a lot of people in power would rather have stayed hidden. He said, yes, Shedeur would eventually get a shot. But then, with a tone that carried both disbelief and anger, he cut to the core. The real problem wasn't opportunity, it was preparation. Or, more accurately, the complete lack of it. I could almost see it in my mind. Shedeur Sanders, a young quarterback with raw talent and fire in his veins, walking into practices where the reps were scarce and the deck already stacked against him. Riddick emphasized that while the door to the field might crack open for him, the odds were so heavily weighted that even a flawless performance might not be enough. He stressed that these limited snaps weren't just reps, they were pressure cookers. Every throw, every read, every decision carried the weight of his entire future. One slight misstep could be twisted into proof that he wasn't ready. And why? Because he hadn't been given the time or the resources to build chemistry with the very teammates he was supposed to lead. That's like asking a pilot to fly through a storm with a crew he's never met and a plane he's barely been in. Riddick's voice sharpened as he reminded us of an unspoken truth in the NFL. Players drafted this low, or brought in quietly, without the backing of a high pick, don't survive unless someone in that building is willing to fight for them. It's not enough to be talented. You need an advocate, a champion who's willing to stand in the war room or the coaching meetings and stake their reputation on you. But when it came to Shedeur Sanders, there was only silence. Riddick himself admitted he didn't know who had been fighting for Shedeur. Nobody stood up to say, this kid matters. In a league where connections and politics are as powerful as arm strength and accuracy, that silence is deafening. And then came the revelation that sent shockwaves through everyone listening. Jimmy Haslam, the owner, openly admitted that he didn't even know Shedeur Sanders had been signed. He left the decision entirely to the coaching staff. Think about that for a second. The man responsible for steering the franchise had no idea about the quarterback fighting for his football future. That wasn't just a careless oversight, it was a glaring indictment of the organization's lack of alignment. It screamed of a system where communication breaks down, where a young player can be brought in, set up to fail, and discarded before leadership even notices. Stephen A. Smith wasn't about to let that slip by unnoticed. His response was fire, the kind of passionate takedown that makes you sit forward in your chair. He called Haslam's comments for what they were, evidence of something deeper and darker. This wasn't just a casual Friday remark Haslam made while driving home. This was a reflection of power plays behind the scenes, politics shaping the roster, influence deciding futures. Stevens said it bluntly, they were not going to let it happen. And honestly, when you look at Haslam's own words, it's hard to disagree. It was a confirmation of what so many of us already suspected. There were people in power who never intended to give Shedeur Sanders a fair chance. And here's where it becomes more than a story about a quarterback and a preseason depth chart. This is about the system itself, the culture, the hierarchy, the quiet decisions that can derail a promising career long before it ever has a chance to take off. You could feel the ripple of unease through the fan base. This isn't the first time we've seen a talented player caught in a web of mismanagement and ego, and unless something changes, it won't be the last. As I sat with Riddick's words, Tom Brady's earlier criticisms, and Stephen A.'s scorching commentary, I realized how much bigger this is than one player. Talent, no matter how electric, isn't enough. Shedeur Sanders could have the arm strength, the composure, the leadership, you name it. But without reps, without trust, without a system that invests in him, even he could be written off as a failure. And that's what burns. Because this isn't just about Shedeur Sanders. This is about the quiet, invisible forces that decide which players rise and which fade away, often without fans ever understanding why. So I have to ask, because I can't shake the question swirling in my mind, can any player truly thrive when the system is set up this way? Is it fair to put the entire burden on the athlete, to demand they overcome not just defenders on the field but politics and neglect off it? Should coaches and executives be held accountable for failing to develop the talent they bring in? Or are we really saying it's all on the player to defy impossible odds? I want to know your thoughts. Drop your take in the comments. Let's have the conversation that too many people avoid. Because if we don't shine a light on this, the next Shedeur Sanders, the next overlooked talent, might never get the chance to show us the greatness they have inside. And that would be a tragedy not just for the player, but for the game we all love.